temperature. And it gets worse. If you happen to want to cut a cylinder or an irregular shape like this at an angle, not only does it catch, but here's your death grip here. But it catches and spirals like this right into the blade. All right. So you never, ever want to do that. So the better way of doing that is this. You make a V block that looks like this. And then your cylinder can sit in here like so. So it is held.
Hang on just a second. I wanted to get rid of that. There.
Right at the point of being cut. Now, that is one great V block. And you can't do that on the table saw because your blade won't go high enough unless you're using a 14-inch blade. But you can do this on the bandsaw. So what I've done is cut a square of wood, tilted the blade to 45, tilted the table to 45, and just diagonally cut the piece, and then glued those two pieces to a piece of plywood right here.
So I thought this was a pretty ingenious little thing that he had made here. And I thought at first it was just kind of like a V that but he took like a 4x4 and cut that sucker in half on his bandsaw. One of the things that has happened with me is that whenever I have a jet bandsaw, and the right underneath the blade, where the blade enters, goes through the table, there's a little port there. It looks kind of about like this, only it's right where the blade comes down. And anytime I cut something, I have massive amounts of sawdust on the back side of the saw. And it looks like the little suction thing is not working at all. And so this is this is how you can fix that problem.
This area here, look at where it is. It's opposite to what you would think. Ordinarily, you'd think, oh, well, the sawdust drops down here and collects here. Well, it actually doesn't. There's a air current that happens inside the lower housing here. And as that sawdust travels around here, it comes up in this direction, loses velocity, and drops down into this sawdust pickup right here. So that's, the Rikon over.
And that's happened to me all the time. I mean, every time I saw something, I get massive amounts of sawdust that sit over on this side of the saw. Another thing that he has done is created like an outfeed table for his bandsaw, and he's taken one of these one of these stands that we all have. In fact, I've got two of them up, and he's taking it apart. And when you do this, it's critical to know to make this has to be parallel to this edge, or if it's not, it'll actually start causing the piece to twist.
This is one of those stands that you can buy, that everybody buys one and they use it a couple of times. It's so frustrating because it falls over when you're attempting to use it. So what I've done is I've disassembled the stand, took one leg off, and replaced it with a piece of wood. The leg down at the floor, I've cut to length, and in this machine, I've got it attached to the bandsaw with some conduit clamps, like clips, like so. And over here, I drilled and tapped, put in an eye screw, and that stabilizes this surface. So this whole thing on this bandsaw, along with every bandsaw in the shop here, this roller is set. So it's about a 32nd of an inch higher than the table surface. So when I'm resawing things, I'm not struggling to press the wood through. I'm just pressing the wood with 2 fingers, simply because the weight of the big piece of wood is actually rolling on the this roller here. Now, when I'm doing curves, of course, you can't use a straight roller. So I'll flip this up, and that's eyeball rollers. That was 1995 for the stand. And so I basically cannibalized it and taken it apart and mounted it on the bandsaw.
This first presentation that he did, any questions about the bandsaw that I can answer at this point? Because we're going to move on to the jointer now. He spent most of his time on the bandsaw. He also did the same thing when he did his live presentation. I think he really likes that tool. He's got several of them. He must have this massive shop. When you see the whole video, you'll see that he's got some machines that are industrial grade. He's got a planer that must weigh 4,000 pounds. But anyway, so questions? Hearing none, we move on. This was, I thought, one of the most interesting things he did many interesting things, but when he talked about the joiner, one of the things that he was really proud of were all of his push sticks. And he keeps them right here by the jointer. And whoops, sorry. And then he, so that he can access them real well. Now notice the shape of this. And that's because he's trying to make sure that all of his force is on the outfeed table.
So there's my piece of wood that we're passing over the jointer. I, of course, would never, ever leave that out. That is always closed like so. But in any case, if I'm going to joint that, my hand is up here. All right. And the beauty to this push stick is, remember, that's the business end of the machine. So you are pressing down when you're on the outfeed, not on the back over here. And then the other thing, which I believe is an important tip, and that's this: I always use hold downs like so. A number of times, I'm teaching and I'll watch people hook a finger over this like so. That's asking for trouble. And these are magnetic, and they live right on the front of my jointer. And there's another pair of them on the other jointer in the other room. So all I have to do is, all I'm concerned about is pressing down right here and pushing this thing through. It's held tight to the fence, and we're good to go. I haven't mentioned it, but I should. And any sliding agent is a good idea. You really do not want to have to fight the piece of wood over any machine. It should glide. And I'll either use this or another product called waxy lip. So my machines are all coated with that to make the process that much easier.
After saying that he uses these hold downs, he also then goes on to say that he uses of these. He will, well, first let's talk about the floats.
These are made by a fellow Jerry Forsheet, and they're plywood with a hardwood handle on them. And this is actually the float from a masonry tool that's been glued right to a piece of plywood. And these are fabulous. And I really like the design of this. I do not like push sticks that look like this that have a handle on them. And the reason for that is if things go pear-shaped, then I want to be able to let go of the push stick. I want it pulled out of my hand rather than me getting pulled into something because my hand's gripping a push stick.
After talking about using those stops, he's now saying that whenever he's doing it, he's joining all he wants is just a flat surface, that he will send the piece through at an angle.
I'm just going to pass this through right like so. So if I'm just after a flat surface, it goes over the jointer like this. And then thank you for pointing that out. This line on here that you see, like so, that's a magic marker line that indicates the grain. That decision I'm going to make before the machine is turned on. And right behind me.
This will be important when we talk about the planer. But he's taken all of his wood. What he was saying in the next piece here was that he's got a big stack of wood over the corner or behind him, where he's got all of these pieces marked. And you'll see why that matters when we talk about the planer in a minute.
Here.
This happens to be the planer that he recommends, that he kind of badmouths the DeWalt planer. The main reason is because there's a infeed and outfeed rollers in here with a cutter head in between, and the DeWalt planers tend to have those rollers too far, in his opinion, from the cutter head, and therefore it's hard to get down to really thin pieces. And at one point in the discussion, he recommends this planer from Home Depot. So I thought I'd throw a picture up of it. I think it was about $440. So it's not incredibly expensive for planers as they go, but this is the one he recommends. He's trying to do very thin laminates. So he's going to be trying to cut stuff down to, I think at one point he's doing like 5/64 or something like that. And the way he can do that is by creating this thing he calls a float. And he'll explain how to do it in this next clip.
So I've got a piece of wood here that I've bandsawn. I'm after a piece of wood that's maybe 3/32 of an inch thick. This machine here, or any of the machines that you see here, will plane down to 3/64 of an inch. All right. And the way that works is this. The machine won't go down that far. The cutter head won't go down that far. So we put in here an auxiliary float. Locking handle up. Like so. So this is just a piece of melamine that's waxed and very smooth. And I've run a cut on the table saw here. So you see, table saws can be used. So I've got a cut right here, and that's gonna, I put a little bit of a spline in here, and that spline simply drops right into the space between the machine and the infeed table here. So that allows you to get much closer. There's another trick, and it's a wonderful trick, and it's this. This surface right here is my lead edge as it goes in, and I have taken a rasp. And can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, let me swivel this around. Oops. So here's my laminate that I want to stick in the machine. I'm taking a rasp. I'm using a Shinto rasp at this point, but I'm just going to take that front surface down like so. All right.
And then we're going to go to
is this a pencil line right here on each one of those laminates. When the wood gets this thin, it's really hard to see the grain. So a nice little tip is this: you make those diagonal marks, which indicate the grain direction when it's a big piece of wood, so you can see the grain. So that is identified for this little skinny piece here, that it goes into the machine like this. Now, what we're not going to do is press this thing down and feed it into the machine. Instead, we're going to use the in-feed roller as a fulcrum. I'm trying to shift this around a bit. Here we go. So in-feed roller is back inside here. So I'm going to lift the tail end of this up actually quite dramatically. And if you imagine my hand, let's see, how can we do this? If my hand is the in-feed roller and I'm lifting this up like so, it's almost impossible for me to pick this thing up. But if I lay it down flat, I can pick it up quite easily. So just lifting the tail end up helps that leading edge stay flat to your plate here as you pass it into the machine. And the same thing as it exits. We're going to dramatically lift this thing up like so as it comes out of the machine. Now I'm going to turn this on, and
we don't need to see him turn it on. But that's really what he said. He didn't do a lot more with the planer, but he is obviously wants to get really thin pieces. He says using that technique, he gets absolutely no snipe on any of his pieces. So anyway, that's what I got out of the first presentation that he did. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody has any questions. Well, if no one has any questions, I'm probably going to try to do some more of these later with some other things. Let me know, give me some feedback about how.
Steve Adderley had a question.
Yeah, well, one thing I when he was talking about using the back of the blade as a pivot point, it shows you cutting I guess that's a concave arc. Then he said, okay, now when you do it as a convex arc, you do it a little differently. And I'm still trying to put it in my mind how he was doing it, but he went to the other side of the blade, I think, instead of the right side, he went to the left side.
In one of the sessions, he clarified that you always use the side of the blade that's on the convex, the inside part of the curve. So if you choose which side of the blade you're going to, but the inside part of the curve, if you're doing a curve cut, is the side that you register on the blade.
Well, the way I started to think about it is if you're using the back of the blade as like a fulcrum or a pivot point, you're actually causing the teeth to want to work away from the line, always trying to go away from the line. So at the worst, you might get off track, but you're never going to get into the line. And so I'm thinking, well, that's true the other way. You just turn the board in such a fashion that when you're cutting it again, you want the teeth working away from your line at all times. And if I think of it like that, because I have to think about this when I'm doing it, it seems to work for me. But the idea is always to have the teeth working away from that fulcrum point. And if you can do that, if you can think of it like that, then you're doing it correctly, no matter which way the thing arcs, whether it's concave or convex. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it not only makes sense, but I'm really glad you mentioned it, because he didn't mention it. I was in the afternoon session. I think you must have been in the morning session.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
but he didn't mention it in the afternoon session, and he didn't mention it in the videos that I was watching. I know that he uses the same technique when he's cutting a straight line too. But your point, I think, is critical in that, yes, you're always cutting away from the line. So if you do make a mistake, you tend to just get cut into the waste side, not into the good side. And that's where I think he has that technique where he will kind of pivot off the back of the blade and then pull the piece kind of backwards as he kind of chips off that any of the extra, so he can get right back down to the line. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Steve.
And then he also took the two pieces that he cut right to the line, and he says you can put a little bit of sandpaper on them, on one piece or the other, and they're so close that there's so very little irregularity that you can just lightly sand it, and then you have a perfect pattern at that point.
Yeah,
you don't have to take it to a circular sander type thing, because he says when you get a circular sander and you're trying to follow an arc, you get these little wiggles that are, like little washboard effects that are hard to get rid of. And by using this technique and then using a little bit of sandpaper with the cutoff, you don't have it. You have a perfectly smooth surface, so you'll never get those kind of washboard effects on it. Yeah. So I was really impressed with all that.
Yeah,
because I just tried to do something with that on another piece, and then I tried to run it through a router, and I screwed it up on the router, and I think, and this way you don't even have to take it to the damn router or flesh trimmer. You just do it with the damn bandsaw and a little bit of sandpaper, and you're done.
Yeah, because the off piece then becomes your a perfect sanding block, because it's exactly the right shape. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So if you can master this thing, it eliminates all that flesh trimming nonsense.
Yeah, right. Makes sense.
Yeah, Joe, after I saw the first video, I checked my bandsaw and the table was slightly out, so I adjusted it. And then the very next week, I work over at Woodcraft, a guy came in and was complaining that he's got drift so bad on his jet bandsaw that he was going to throw it out. He's talked to Jet 4 or 5 times. They can't figure out why he's got drift, blah, 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 blah. And he was really frustrated with his saw. I said, well, have you checked to see if your table's in alignment? And I walked him through that process. I said, go home, watch the video from Michael Fortune, and then adjust your adjust your table. And he called me up and he said, damn it, that was exactly right. My fence was way out of alignment. My table was way out of alignment. Yeah. So if you have a bandsaw, check your alignment of your table. You'll be amazed to find out it's probably off.
Another thing that is not brought up here, but he was showing how you can take the table and turn it like at a 45-degree angle and cut 45-degree cuts on your board with the table turned. And he says you can also go the other direction. You can go and turn the table the other way. But he says most of the time the edges of the table interfere with how far you can push it. So what you can do there is literally cut out a slice of the edge of that table on the other side. So now you can push it even further over, closer to 45 degrees in the opposite direction. Now, I don't think we can do that at the shop, because that means butchering up our bandsaws. But you can see it if you had your own home bandsaw, you could cut it. He's a real proponent for modifying your machines, whatever way you want. Tap screws in them, do this, do that, put a hose down at the bottom, whatever it takes to make your machine work for you. Don't be afraid to bang it up.
That was definitely something that I really got out of this, is that when just that thing where he's attached that outfeed roller. He said at one point, I don't know if I played it for you, that he tapped screws into the side of the, they put bolts through the side of the bandsaw and all this stuff. And yeah, he's a big proponent of if it doesn't work right, design it yourself and fix it yourself. Yeah. Yeah, I did see in one of the other videos, I think I forget which one it was now, where he put the table at a 45-degree angle and ran a piece of wood through it. And I've never done that because I spent so much time trying to get my table square to the blade. I'm kind of like afraid to move it now, but that would be something that would be that I hope to try.
That reminds me, he said, yeah, that's the biggest worry is trying to get your table leveled again. And he showed how he took a bolt and on the one side there, he tapped it into the frame of the bandsaw, and he has it threaded in such a way with a nut just so that when he puts it back, it always rests on that nut and it's always square on. Mm-hmm. So there's another modification he did to his bandsaw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And part of that modification also, he shortened the bolt.
Yes.
So that he could take it off and do more than 45 degrees.
Yes, right. That's right. So yeah.
I'd say that registration bolt is a pretty common technique. Some of the bandsaws come with it.
Oh, do they?
What he did, he made his shorter and then he put a little top piece on top of it. So when he takes the short bolt and this additional piece, it's exactly flat. And I thought, well, I could do that on mine because I've got one of those bolts. And then you can tip the table both ways.
Yeah.
By the way, before we forget, Joe, I want to put in a plug for the education group. They recorded all these 4 videos that you took these excerpts from and put them on the new education store. You might not know about that. Yeah. And you can buy all 4 of these videos for $20 for all 4 of them. And it's 4 2-hour videos. That is far and away the best bargain in the world.
Yeah, that was.
I was gonna say I just did it during the meeting.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Amazing stuff.
Right. Actually the very first slide of this presentation had a link to that store, and I put it in the chat. Although it's probably not there. No, it's not there now because we got dropped and then put it up. But if you go to our homepage, the Guild's homepage, and click on education, at the very bottom is education store, and you'll find those 4 videos there for $20. And I tell you, that is the best bargain you're ever going to find.
Except for the fact, Joe, that until you went through this session, I had already paid for those classes, but I didn't understand the whole thing about the one-hand bandsaw guiding. Now I do.
Oh, cool. Well.
What are you buying? Are you buying the ability to download them to your own computer, or
they're on YouTube? But I think when you buy them, you get actually I don't know what happens when you buy them because I took the class because I paid to actually watch the videos live when he was doing them. Chip just sent me links to them.
When you buy it, you get email with the links to all 4 videos.
Okay.
And then you can watch them anytime you want.
Right. And then you can go to YouTube, and then I've saved them to my account in YouTube, so I can pull them up later on if I want to.
Is there a time limit on those links?
No, they're hidden links. So it's basically a secret YouTube channel, and you have to have the link to get to it.
Yeah, that's the deal. Yeah. That's the deal. But yeah, I mean that's exactly that's exactly right. What in fact, let's see. Well, I'm not going to pull it up, but anyway, yeah, that's the deal. It's a great bargain. I mean, so.
Well, thanks for doing this, Joe. It was worthwhile for sure.
Okay. Well, I probably will do more of them. Like I said, I had this grand idea that I was going to go through all 4 videos and pluck out the best things. But after going through that first video, I said, there's
too much there.
There's too much there. Yeah, there's too much there. And it was really, of course, very helpful to look at them over and over again as I'm preparing this. So glad I hope people got something.
Just in case, to avoid having people missing the link in the future, if you copy the link for tonight's video and put it in your calendar, it's the same link every month. So you can create a reoccurring event for yourself and you'll have the link every month.
Okay.
I was just going to say one other quick thing. You know, we talked about those planers. He's using ones with standard knives as opposed to these helical heads. He says that adds a whole lot more cost to the thing. He says, I think he's had one planer, he's had it for 7 years or I don't know, maybe 8, 9 years. I guess it was 7 years. And he's used it only after about the 7th year, and he uses it all the time, has he had to have those blades sharpened. And he says the reason that happens is he never uses sandpaper on his wood, because even though the sandpaper appears to be fine, it's leaving little beds of rock in the wood, and it'll just dull your blades in no time. So that and I guess plywood with the glues and so on. I think I've heard this before, but you shouldn't use any sharp blades with where you've been using sandpaper. So that's just an aside that came out.
That was a hint that I'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
He said, don't ever use any cutting tool on wood that you've previously sanded, because you will immediately dull your tools. And I thought, wow, that's amazing.
So, you know, that's why he's saying don't spend the money on these helical heads. Just treat your tool with respect, and it'll serve you, and you're fine.
He also, you're right, Steve. He said they really jumped the price way. You know, if you got a helical head, the price goes through the roof. And he also pointed out that apparently these cutters are very small diameters, and he thought that the physics or mechanics were going the wrong way to have these real small diameter cutting heads. He said, but I did, to the best of my knowledge, well, he might have had helical heads, but he definitely has just the knives on the ones he showed in the video.
And he does show you how to sharpen the blades just with an Arkansas stone, and a real simple technique for sharpening them. It's more like honing them than sharpening them.
Yeah, he does that with the joiner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he has ways, he has a little jigs to hold the blade at the right angle, and then he used an oil stone to just kind of hone them, and left them right in place, which that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a wrap.
Okay, thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Joe.
I'm still curious to who the other Zoom leader is who's logged in here. Who is that?
It's not me.
Yeah.
I'm logged in as me.
I'm logged in as me too. So,
because when we lost the connection, I was unable to gain control of the muting and things like that again, because somebody had come in.